Okay, so this is part two. Let me just talk about covert narcissism a little bit before we get into this. Covert narcissists are basically narcissists who are often misdiagnosed. Okay, I think that is the essence of what the person was getting at in their explanation of it. And I'll do some more research into this, but I think that this is something that they're trying to define so they can direct the way people think and not get people to think in terms of the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order. Because what is the cure? I mean, it kind of goes without saying that who has the most character to lead a movement to purge the world of narcissists? Obviously, liberals, conservatives, libertarians, these people do not focus on focused moral intensity. They're just political puppets. You see what I'm saying? But with that being said, the covert narcissist is often diagnosed with depression, right? Because they're like a slightly depressed, psychotic person. Okay, something that you know, someone might mistakenly label me as because I'm sad at times, and society refuses to admit the obvious facts in regards to character. For example, if I said that the ideal man is somebody with, you think of like an islander, but it goes beyond an islander, right? Somebody with a tan or brown skin, somebody with a certain character, certain physique, right? We're talking about the pinpointed ideal. Okay, some people say, well, that's psychotic. Everyone knows the ideal man is white, but they won't directly say it. They'll try in a roundabout way to pretend that I'm crazy. Okay, so I say the ideal man is somebody dressed in a white martial art gi with a very effective, sharp sword that the person uses as a symbol of the principles of God, a symbol of the spirit of God that helps them refine the spirit of God. Okay, and things like this. You see what I'm saying? They would reject that for their Western supremacy and say you're delusional, you're on your own on that one. And some of them are racist and they say the N-word and so on and so forth. Okay, that's very significant here because these people who are narcissists are actually in a deluded sort of state. Okay, and I put a picture at the end of this video, a couple pictures of some kind of narcissist smiling. One of them was a female in the original picture on YouTube. The breast was showing, but I'm going to cut that part out because it shows you how they're withholding and they're like a psychopath withholding. Okay, now keep in mind this is mostly because of their patriarchal line. RNA expression is mostly from your father, right? Your gene expression, your brain expression that controls your judgment, sexual behavior, da da da, is mostly from your father's line. Okay, so it's not that it's not that women are withholding, so guys should be able to do all kinds of horrible things to them. Okay, the reason why that is because other guys failed them. Okay, they failed to prevent their daughters from being evil. They failed from being good and cultivating good themselves and then breeding daughters who are good. So that's important to know. But with that being said, yes, there's a bunch of crazy witch-like bitches who are withholding sex from more decent people and sleeping with more evil people because people in America, even Dr. Ramani pointed out, they're very materialistic. They feel entitled quite often, and it's the structure of that. The more you're like them, the more you're likely to be financially stable and rich. But the more you say, hey, I insist on character, just like the Bible says, the more you're going to be persecuted. The Bible goes as far as to say all who wish to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. So again, the covert narcissists are misdiagnosed as just depressed. And often on medication they feel a little bit better, but their problem is their philosophy, their way of thinking, and there's a genetic component. It's nature and nurture coming together because people basically, generally speaking, except for me, are from a long line of people who were outside of moral precision. So they're a little bit off to very off, and as a result, they've developed a spectrum of narcissistic traits. Okay, it's a form of narcissism to think you're too good to obey God through me, even though there's an obvious righteousness gap between me and everyone else. Okay, for me to show you with facts, logic, sound logic, that I should be in charge, that with any scale that's logical, universal scale, that I'm the most righteous and just is not narcissism. That's simply facts. If I was to say, hey, I'm 6'4", I'm a good looking guy, you know what I'm saying? I have world record speed, I have a top martial arts challenge. Is that narcissism or is it pointing the facts? Because as I'm sort of campaigning, so to speak, without a belief that people will ever follow me, mind you, but I'm sort of campaigning to say, hey, I'm the top I'm the most valid leader ever. I have to make my case. If I was running for president, for example, I'd have to say the difference between me and other people. As I'm trying to get people to do the right thing, which means obeying God through me, I have to show you my characteristics and achievements and so on and so forth. That's not the same as being a narcissist who is in a deluded state where they think that the way they're presenting their arguments is okay. They think that, that their arguments are sound when they're just materialistic and psychology-based garbage. It's things like this. Okay. So now let's get into this video here. The part 2. I'll talk about the organized rape by deception construct that overkills and I'm right. So how do I know they're narcissists and I'm not? Well, I just explained it, but let's overkill it. Point number 1. I'll give you 7 points. Point number 1. Colonialism, neocolonialism, and consent. No attractive woman in her right mind, would date a colonist or a neocolonist in a narrow or broad sense of those words. This is a component of one measure of a female's intelligence and her ability to consent. So again, if you look at the Native American genocide, you look at South Africa, you know what I mean by a colonist. By Western colonists, okay, anyone like them. It can be Eastern, it can be an African colonist if they're treating people a certain way. No one in their right mind would come to America and date toward George Bush, Donald Trump, any politician, any rich person. No one in their right mind, okay? In their right mind. If I became rich, that'd be the difference because it'd be built on character inside the moral order. So, it's rape by deception when we see females dating, they call it hypergamy when they date toward the rich. And evolutionary psychologists actually argued quite often that hypergamy is good, but it's bad because they're dating toward the rich narcissist. So no female in her right mind dates toward the rich narcissist and thinks that love doesn't matter. Love is far greater than money. I used to live in Saratoga, in a house that's worth like $3-4 million now. It was a swimming pool, big mansion, very nice house. And let me tell you, that doesn't mean anything. I was kind of a little bit sad that my classmates thought of me as some kind of rich prick. Now, my dad is the exception because he's a brain surgeon. He's giving away so much money, millions and millions of dollars, and, he's not rich right now. Okay? So because of his lifestyle, okay, that's not the same as being a rich person who's intent on being rich their whole lives and they put that first and so on and so forth. Okay? That's basically everyone else. Everyone who's rich right now is a bad person. Okay? And no female in her right mind would date the colonist, the neo-colonist, anyone in these cultures, not a jock, not an emo, not a rocker, no one in these cultures that are allowed because they're neo-colonialist culture, even gang banging. If you're gang banging without a higher cause, you're just a neo-colonialist fucking brute stooge that helps them create the psychological construct. I'm pretty straightforward, right? All right. And again, the word consent has the word con in it for a reason. There's confidence, consent, condescending. It's all connected, right? The con. Point number 2. Consent, right? It's sent from the organized social engineers. Point number 2, corporations, social clubs, lobby groups, government entities, and other more influential people get together and determine the general psychological construct of society as they have for many hundreds of years. We see that in Babylon, in Egypt, in Persia, Greece, Rome, you name it, right? The Phoenicians, okay, you name it. That's what they do. They get together and say, these are the rules, and they want it to play out a certain way. If it doesn't play out the way they want it to play, then they adjust the rules accordingly. Okay? And so corporations, social clubs, lobby groups, government entities, and other more influential people get together and determine the general psychological construct of society as they have for many hundreds of years. And the 600,000 homeless people we have, 1 in 4 females being molested before the age of 18, sexually molested. Okay, all this is the output of the construct that they deliberately made. Okay, so they're first and foremost responsible on a massive level, on a large scale. They are always seeking more social and sexual control, and this is why there are obelisks, which are phallic symbols, in key locations in the world, right? They're sexual control symbols. Obviously, character should be the most sought-after trait in a person. Obviously, right? Obviously, character should be the most sought-after trait in a person. Nothing else should matter, okay? Except for, some kind of romantic appeal, but that has to do with character, okay? If you really have a lot of character, you're not going to let yourself be unattractive. And if you really have a lot of character, you're going to know that the top martial artist ever has to have an attractive wife that he's comfortable with. After they try to get him to settle all his life, it's overkill. He shouldn't settle. No one with character would expect me to be with a female who's not beautiful inside and out. Pretty straightforward. It's called doing God justice and the top martial arts justice. Okay? If God was here in the flesh, would you present him your worst fruits from your harvest or your most choicest fruits? And would you accept his judgment on what they are? And so it is with me, the top martial artist ever, the Christ, the chosen alpha of all of humanity that God set apart as the anointed one. Okay. The focused moral intensity and real righteous heroism in the top martial artist, who by default is from the Royal Black African Falcon Martial Art Order, is ideal. That's why we don't see anybody in popular culture who's comparable to Martin Luther King. Okay, so you don't pick figs from thistles or grapes from thorn bush. You pick them from where you expect it to be, and we expect that to be in a particular grouping of black people, which is a particular grouping of the Igbo tribe. And I'm from the royal family of Martin Luther King's tribe, the Igbos, that produce part of the fruit of my tribe is Martin Luther King. Okay, we know this because of the spectrum of mind, body, soul, and spirit. Point number 3. There are many managerial groups that exist that build confidence as part of the con. They do this so people have a false sense of security and a self-destructive confidence that causes them to make stupid mistakes that they otherwise wouldn't. They have made it unpopular for people to write things down and get their thoughts together in order to figure out what the ideal man is like and why the common conceptions, mind you, of ideal or dreaming are childish and incorrect. The people who attractive females are willing to date generally are horrible people. They're able to date females who are that dumb, and these females are horrible. They're able to whore themselves to rich scum and bootlicking conformists and so on and so forth. Even serial killers. Look at all the Manson fans and all the serial killer fans. Just sickening. Look at heavy metal, rock and roll. Look at the satanic versions of music. Look at people who pretend that because they don't listen to those musics that they're better than them when they're toward the core of the corporate problem. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Point number 4. One of the major tactics that they use is contrast. To understand the contrast game, it is helpful to talk about the good cop, bad cop psychology that police officers use to get people to open up to them. It is similar to the psychology that is being used to get females to open up their legs, spread their legs for the rich and their allies who are the lowest forms of life. Point number 5. The foolish participation in the various cultures we see is clear-cut evidence that attractive females are subtly coerced, confused, misdirected, tricked, and psychologically deceived to the point that their romantic judgment is the essence of terrible with no exception. So why is this? Because guys and any females rolling with them, influential guys, right? It is a patriarchy of sorts, got together, okay, to trick them on purpose. And I've proven that a million times over already. And we're not even done yet. Okay, so I'm going to read this again. This part's important. The foolish participation in the various cultures we see is clear-cut evidence that attractive females are subtly coerced, confused, misdirected, tricked, and psychologically deceived to the point that their romantic judgment is the essence of terrible with no exception. Point number 6. How do so many bikers, gangsters, corporate scum, skaters, jocks, social club types, fraternity types, rockers, emos, goths, military types, police, intelligence agents, politicians, etc. manage to get attractive-ish to attractive females? They obviously play their parts in the game and pretend they are men and that they are worth dating, etc. Think about it. The very description of those words gives away that they don't live moral precision. They're not virtuous. They're just conformists to these neo-colonialist, influenced neo-colonialist groups. Point number 7. The very phrase turned out by itself proves me right. What does it mean to be turned out? They're going to go out of the immoral construct, out of the world, and into the heavenly realm, but they were turned into evil. They were turned out. The very phrase turned out by itself proves me right. Consider the porn industry, pimps, players, and LGBT activists. How are they so successful in turning people out if schools and other parts of the psychological construct aren't instrumental in making it so that they are ripe for turning out? The word ripe is similar to the word rape, and it's also similar to the word rope. Ripe, rope, rape, rope and hope. Give them false hope, false confidence, false sense of security, and then mentally rope them. They're mentally, tied up, okay, and then they willingly, quote unquote willingly, submit themselves to the sexual activities of scum. Thank you.